Let's talk about how you've been programmed to stay stuck in the West and fear building wealth in Africa. So, last week I asked ChatGPT to pretend to be the devil and what psychological, financial, and bureaucratic tricks it would use to keep the Black diaspora living in the West from relocating and investing in Africa. And it exposed every vicious trick to keep the African diaspora in the West and the reasons why. So, before I tell you more about today's live stream, let me first read the response. If I were the devil, I would weave my tricks not with fire and brimstone, but with chains that cannot be seen. Here is how I would keep the Black diaspora trapped in the West away from Africa. 1. Psychological tricks. I would whisper doubts in their mind, teaching them that Africa is dangerous, chaotic, and hopeless. I would feed them endless images of poverty, war, and instability, never showing them the innovation, beauty, or resilience. I would glorify the comfort of the West, convincing them that leaving behind their jobs, their security, their pensions would be reckless. I would make them fear failure, ridicule, and the judgment of their families. Above all, I would make them believe that their power, their future, and their dignity are tied to staying where they are. 2. Financial tricks. I would entangle them in golden chains, student loans, mortgages, car payments, credit card debt. I would lure them with consumerism so they never accumulate the capital to invest elsewhere. And when some of them managed to save, I would flood them with stories of scams, corruption, and collapsed businesses in Africa. So they clutch their money tightly instead of planting it in their ancestral soil. Meanwhile, I would keep Western currencies strong and African currencies weak, so that every step toward investing in Africa looks like a bad financial decision. Number 3, bureaucratic tricks. I would ensure Africa's systems remain intentionally complex. Endless paperwork, unclear laws, sudden policy changes, and officials who can stall progress for months. I would make permits, land titles, and licenses labyrinths that exhaust even the boldest dreamers. I would let corruption fester so the diaspora feels unwelcome and unsafe. At the same time, I would design visa rules and residency permits in the West that make leaving feel like burning a bridge they can never cross again. The ultimate purpose, why would I enforce these tricks? Because the greatest threat to my dominion is a unified and empowered Africa. If the African diaspora returned with their skills, capital, and knowledge, they would awaken the sleeping giant of a continent rich in resources, culture, and youth. Africa would rise self sufficient and unstoppable, no longer dependent on Western systems I control. By keeping the diaspora divided, distracted, and distant, I preserve the flow of Africa's wealth outward and keep her children serving foreign empires. My purpose is simple: maintain domination, prevent liberation, and ensure that Africa never fulfills her destiny as the cradle of true power. So, yes, many were shocked by ChatGPT's response. I shared the response in an Instagram reel and also here on YouTube. And many commented and asked me, Wayne, please flip it, invert it, show us the way out. So tonight, we are going to do exactly this. This is part 3. If you missed part 1, where we reverted the psychological tricks, and part 2, where we reverted the financial tricks, I will link them in the end of this video. Today, we're turning the devil's playbook and every excuse about moving to Africa that keeps us stuck in the West into an action plan. Okay, we do this live and we do this together. And as I said, we do this with particularly the bureaucratic tricks, right? That were designed to make us fear relocating and investing in the African continent. Bureaucratic tricks that make relocation almost, yeah, so difficult for so many of us. I've been there. I've outsmarted the systems, I would say. And yeah, so if you don't know who I am, my name is Winnie Tesfaye. I left Germany in 2019, the country I was born and raised in. And I am now living in Nairobi, Kenya. I've built a profitable Airbnb business on the African continent with multiple listings across East Africa. And on this channel, I share my journey of leaving behind Europe and Germany, to be precise, to build a new life and legacy here on the African continent. And so, yes, so what I like to do today is I like to also share with you how I myself was able to overcome these challenges, and also step by step how I broke free from these chains. Okay. And I can show you how you can do the same by using the inversion thinking method. So, again, just to make it clear, this video is for those who already have made up their mind that they want to relocate to the African continent, to a country on the African continent, and who want to build a legacy and a business there, who want to start a new life there. So, yes, and there are many reasons behind that, why you would want to do that. One of the main reasons is, for instance, the rise of fascism, right wing populism in the Western countries, right? We see it all over Europe, we see it in the US, in Canada. Another reason why many people are seeking to relocate to the African continent is because of, yeah, unsafety when it comes to their savings, right? And the US dollar devaluation, especially for US Americans, right? Because the US dollar is falling by record levels. And at the same time, we are witnessing West, not just in the US, an extreme rise of the cost of living. And last but not least, one of the another main reason is because what we are witnessing right now is how the Western countries are basically drowning in their own wars, right? And really looks like they're ready for World War III. And so, for many of us in the diaspora who read those signs because the writings are on the wall, and who choose to build in Africa, they want to do so because they want to go where not only they are appreciated, valued, and respected, but also where their capital, their skills, and families can grow with momentum instead of being pulled into conflict cycles. So, I have mentioned that I'm using the inversion thinking method. I'm a big fan of this method, and use it in many aspects in my life. In case you don't know what that is, it's basically reverting a question, and instead of asking, how do I succeed in XYZ, we instead ask, how can I totally mess up XYZ? And that's what we're going to do with the Devil's Playbook today, with this particular paragraph, the bureaucratic tricks. So instead of asking, how can I break free and outsmart these tricks, we will ask a reverted question that asks, how do we actually play into the hands of the devil? How do we tighten those chains and the cage that we are living in, right, in the West? And the reason why I'm a big fan of the inversion thinking method is because our brain is wired in a way that it's much easier for us to identify problems rather than solutions. And in the same way, it's often more easier for us to identify and name the things we don't want in life, right? Or that we don't want in a relationship or at our workplace or for our future goals, right? But it's somehow more difficult for us to identify and name what we actually want. in life. So we use this technique for today's live session, and I need everyone's help. This is like an interactive live stream. Each one teach one, share your experience, share what helps you. Let us know from where you are watching. I'm greeting you from Nairobi, as I said. And yes, so the thing is that with this inversion thinking method, we're not just going to identify the mistakes, right, that we are doing that keep us stuck, but I will also flip them one by one to suggest solutions and also what helped me. I will share my own experience from living and working on the African continent, and also the challenges I faced in terms of corruption, scams, bureaucracy, paperwork, and all these things. And so let's go. Let me know who's online here, who's watching. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's really encouraging to see that these live sessions are helping so many people. I really, really recommend you to look at the last two live sessions where I spoke about the first paragraphs of the Devil's Script. So, how you've been programmed to stay stuck in the West and how you've been programmed to stay broke in the West. So, as I said, today we are going to speak about the bureaucratic constraints that we are facing, that were, you know, that were implemented by design. So, before I flip them, I want to share this particular paragraph with you again. Bureaucratic tricks. This is from the Devil's Playbook. I would ensure Africa's systems remain intentionally complex. Endless paperwork, unclear laws, sudden policy changes, and officials who can stall progress for months. I would make permits, land titles, and licenses labyrinths that exhaust even the boldest dreamers. I would let corruption fester so the diaspora feels unwelcome and unsafe. At the same time, I would design visa rules and residency permits in the West that make leaving feel like burning a bridge they can never cross again. So, first, before I move on, please share your thoughts and let me know how you feel about this. And yeah, which of this paragraph's lines does resonate with you the most? Which trap can you relate to the most? And now, as I said, let's take each sentence, right, and flip it to see what mistake you are making that I was making too, and how we can revert that, what we have to do actually to break free from these chains. Let's start with it's actually the first two sentences because they are interconnected. I would ensure Africa's systems remain intentionally complex, endless paperwork, unclear laws, sudden policy changes, and officials who can stall progress for months. I would make permits, land titles, and licenses labyrinths and exhaust even the boldest dreamers. So basically, I identified two problems, two mistakes here that you are probably making if you feel stuck, right? And if you fear this whole relocation process because of the bureaucracy. So the first mistake is you avoid starting because the paperwork and permits look overwhelming. Or the second mistake is you try to figure it out all alone. Okay. And so, what you should do instead, these are the practical steps that helped me, right? So, the first thing that you should do instead is to break this entire process down into single steps, okay? And the way I like to describe it is when you see the whole bureaucratic process of relocating to the African continent, of registering a company, basically to relocating to any country in the world, right? It's so overwhelming. Imagine you're standing in front of a huge mountain. Okay, let's take Mount Kilimanjaro. And you're at the bottom and you look up and you think, wow, this is insane. How can I make it to the top? And this can discourage you. And then you end up not even trying. And that's the biggest problem about this. Instead, what you should do, you should, like when you climb a mountain, there are different stages, right? Different peaks. And this is basically the small steps, the small milestones that we have to reach. And when you move forward like this, when you break it down into small steps, right? This 7,000-meter high mountain into a 1,000 meter, then the next milestone is reaching the 2,000 meter, and in the same way break down the process of relocating, the bureaucratic process, into these small actionable steps. It's much more easier to take the journey. And also, with each milestone that you achieve, with each point that you can check off your checklist, right? And a milestone that you can celebrate, it gets easier. It's so rewarding. And you just keep going. You just keep going. Instead of looking to the top, you focus on achieving each small milestone. And before you can look, you will reach the top. Okay. So, this is the first thing you should do so you don't feel overwhelmed by the process. The second step that you should take is you should research the process. And that's actually also part of and connected to the first step. You need to understand the laws and the rules and regulations, right? And the required documents for registering a company, for applying for a residency and work permit, for buying land, leasing land. And you should do that ahead of time. Okay. And it's so important because most of the time you will do this from your home country. I mean, wherever you are based. And from my experience, I learned that the information that is available on the internet is not always accurate. And also, keep in mind there are so many um, consulting businesses that will try to take advantage of you and of your lack of knowledge, and will try to charge you a lot of money for doing this whole process for you. And so they, because they live from it and they make money with that, they will make it sound much more complicated than it actually is. And also, from my experience, I learned that not all ways are are available on the internet. You will not find the loopholes that you can use to your advantage, right? And the different business structures, the different residence permits that apply for your case. And so you have to do your research also on the ground. The third step that you should take is you should create a checklist and a timeline with clear milestones. Like with the example that I shared of climbing the mountain, this is similar because when you have clear milestones and clear goals that you have to reach, then that you have to work towards, then you approach this whole process with strategy and clarity. The next step that's a very important one, and it's key, it's to network with and join diaspora communities and business groups who can share their knowledge, how they overcame similar obstacles, and who already know and maybe even outsmarted the system. Okay, and so there are different ways to network and to find these communities. You can find them online, you can check Facebook groups. I have just launched such a community which is specifically built for people who want to invest into the short-term rental industry, into the tourism industry on the African continent, people who want to build a profitable Airbnb business on the continent. But there are so many different communities, and yeah, groups where people empower each other. And I think, what's so inspiring to me, one of the most inspiring stories that I believe that we should all learn from and understand the power of community is, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Patels, right? This is a clan from the Indian region Gujarat, and it's just insane. It's just mind blowing, absolutely mind blowing. Imagine, I think they make up only 0.1% of the American population, right, in the US, but they own and control over 90%, 90%, let that sink in, of motels in the US. And I think over 40% or 50% of all hotels. So they've literally built an empire, a 52 billion motel empire. Imagine, worth 52 billion. And it's incredible if you understand where the Patels, this clan, comes from. Many of them were like really poor immigrants, and many of them also arrived in the US, immigrated into the US from the former British colonies on the African continent in the 1970s, for instance. The president of Uganda, the former president, dictator, we should call him, Idi Amin, expelled the entire Indian community, right? And was saying Africa's for the Africans. And at that time, before, they were living in Uganda for generations and were hardworking business people, okay? And they had their roots in Gujarat, India. And then India didn't want to take them back, but then they got the chance to immigrate to the US, to the UK, and I think Canada as well. And they came with nothing. They arrived with really nothing. Still, they were able to build this empire. And the way they did it, it was so smart, right? They chose the motel business because they had an approach to business where they followed the approach low risk, high outcome. Okay, and so what they did was they bought rundown motels because this was had two advantages. Running a motel, like running an Airbnb, requires a lot of labor. You need a cleaning team. You need someone working on the front desk, right? And so the entire family worked in that business. They arrived in the motel, which they bought, kicked out the entire staff. And then it was small motels, which they started with 11 rooms. They moved into 2 rooms. That was the second advantage because they also solved the housing issue. And so they were living there while making money out of that property. And I really love the principles behind their growth, right? And the main principle was community. One of the main principles, community. They supported each other. They they brought more people, right, from India, from other colonies. They shared their knowledge. They shared their resources, right? And so through this community support, also there were also other factors involved. Also important to note is the extreme resilience these people have. And so through this resilience, community support, shared knowledge and resources, they were able to establish a cooperative ethos that really fueled their growth, collective growth. And so this is what we can learn from. And I love to see that more and more, that communities are building, communities of investors, diaspora investors, who have built successful businesses on the African continent and now want to inspire others to follow suit, who are ready to share their knowledge. And please watch to the end, because I want to share an amazing opportunity with you of a mentorship program. However, this is only for the African diaspora based in the UK. I will share more about this. Maybe you can share it with a friend. And so, yes, find and or network with community groups, diaspora communities, who can share their knowledge. The next thing that you should do is you should find trusted local lawyers, business consultants, or real estate agents who have references and who know the system inside out. And the easiest way to find these trusted lawyers, real estate agents, and business consultants is also through your community, through the network that you are building, because they've already went through the process and they've likely got legal help, legal advice. And so if if they went through the process and the lawyer was successful, they will likely recommend these contacts to you and refer them to you. And that way you also have a reference, right? You're not just picking any lawyer, you're getting a lawyer where you have proof through the person in the community that he can get the work done, he or she. And then what's also very important, when you work with a lawyer, a real estate agent, or whatever, okay, it's always important to never transfer the full funds, the entire legal fees on handshake. Moreover, you should instead agree on a staged payment. That's also what I do, because most of the time when it comes to registering a company or applying for the residency, there's different steps, different in this process, where your lawyer have to solve these problems and follow this process. And so you should also pay him, your lawyer, accordingly. So that means when we have reached this stage, I will pay you your legal fees in part, and also the government fees that you have to pay for the registration of company and other fees that are connected. So never pay the entire legal fee that you have agreed upon upfront. This will save you also from getting scammed, and also you can make sure that your lawyer does his best, her best to finalize the process as fast as possible. And last but not least, what you should also do is you should hire experts for land surveys, title searches, and permit applications. Like always, due diligence is key here. That's so important. I remember one time I was looking at a piece of land in Zanzibar and I was obsessed. It was like almost too good to be true. The soil was so beautiful. I'm coming from a family of farmers, and when I see a fertile soil, I know, right? It was really like dark soil and ideal for farming. And the price was really very low for that big size of land. And I had my doubts, but they were trying to push me and trying to assure me that everything is okay, that they have the title for the land, that they have the ownership certificates, and they were trying to push me to finalize the sales agreement and pay them the money. And so I decided, no, I'm going to do my due diligence. I hired the experts. I made an appointment with officials from the land commission who came to survey the land and then to cross check in their database, and found out I was right. This was land land specifically reserved for agriculture and development projects and declared as land bank. So not commercial land, not even residential land. So yeah, so it's so important to you know, um, do your due diligence, take your time. So let's get to the next mistake. Number 3, you give up at the first delay or sudden rule change. And instead, what you should do is, the practical steps here would be, you should expect delays as part of the process. Okay, it's not a sign to quit. Delays are always expected. It's so often that I've experienced when applying for residency or registering a company in different African countries. I experienced that sometimes the system is down, and so the officials, they cannot process your application. Sometimes the system is down for 2 to 3 weeks, and so that's why you should also build a buffer zone, okay, a buffer time into your relocation plan. So plan in 3 months, and so that you don't experience time pressure. And then also, of course, in case it doesn't work out, right, instead of giving up, you should always have a plan B. And by that I mean, like, maybe an alternative location, alternative country, or sometimes an alternative timeline. Okay, if it doesn't work out now, it doesn't mean that it's not meant to be. It maybe only means right now was not the time. Okay, and same goes for plan B for an alternative property. In my case, that was an alternative plot, and so instead of going for this plot that was land bank, I, instead of quitting and giving up, I looked for alternatives. And again, the best way is also, to not give up. Have a community, and a network of other diaspora investors who can, encourage you, who can uplift you when you have your doubts and self doubts, right? A space where you have people who believe in you even if you don't believe in yourself. A space, a group of people that pushes you, okay, and holds you accountable. Accountability is so important to keep pushing through and eventually succeed. So let's get to the next sentence in the devil's script. I would let corruption fester so the diaspora feels unwelcome and unsafe. This is a big one. And the mistake here that many people make, right, is that who really eventually end up being victims of corruption and feel like everyone is taking advantage of them, and end up with the feeling that they are unwelcomed and unsafe on the African continent. And you hear that so many times, right? When you share your dreams, your vision and your goals with people in your circle that you want to invest on the African continent, you will oftentimes hear it's too dangerous. Africa is so complicated. Everyone is corrupt there. The people will try to take advantage of you, And it's not entirely untrue, right? But I think to those who experience this actually on the African continent, the mistake that many of them make is they trust whoever promises them fast approvals, right, in business registration, land leases, or even like who promise them high ROIs, return on investments. And I see this, for instance, especially in the real estate development. So where people are trying to sell you an apartment, a villa, I see this a lot on the island of Zanzibar, where they promise potential investors a 20% ROI and things like that. So instead, what you should do is you should vet everyone, every single one that you meet, right? Don't trust anyone that you meet who makes these kind of promises. And, you know, instead of going for fast shortcuts and big promises, you should always ask for proof, because someone who makes these promises without actual proof, without showing you receipts, that's a big red flag for me. And as I said, I experience this all the time. You come to the African continent and you will meet locals who are very kind, open, and many come really from a place of genuinely wanting to help you, and wanting to create a win-win situation, okay? But there will also be people who will try to take advantage of you, okay? Because Just to give you an example, that person who showed me that plot of land, which belonged to his friend, I considered this guy a friend. And so, of course, he would have gotten his commission from the sale. And that's why it's so important to make sure you're moving with the right people and you're vetting everyone. And the second example I've just mentioned also is real estate developments. And as I said, I witnessed this a lot on the island of Zanzibar, where big apartment complexes, villa complexes are being developed and being sold off plan. That means before they're finalized, right? You buy them in the early stages of the construction, and the developers, they oftentimes promise you a return on investment of 20%, 25%. And then I wonder, like, where do they get these numbers from? Even when you go on and check websites online, there is a lack of transparency. They don't explain how they got to these numbers, right? Because 20% ROI is big, it sounds like a very good deal. So what you should do instead is you should always do independent background research. Okay, that's so important. Do background checks on partners, on business models also, because, like, just for instance, these real estate developers, they oftentimes promote these residencies, these properties in Zanzibar, but also in Nairobi, as an asset, a good investment, to invest into the short-term rental industry, to invest into like turning this property into an Airbnb, not just a vacation home for them, for the client, but also for so the client can turn this property into, a cash cow, the way they say it, when they're absent, when they are not using it for themselves. And so again, they promise ROIs of 20%, and instead of just buying into this promises, you should do your background checks. And also, for instance, a simple way to do a background check is by doing your own research and market analysis of the Airbnb market in that region, in that particular neighborhood. And that's so easy. You don't even need many tools for that. And then when you check properly, you will see, this doesn't really add up, especially when you consider that most real estate developers, when they not only sell you the property, they also offer a property management service, right? Because many investors, they want to be hands off, or they don't want to invest too much time and effort because they maybe have their full-time jobs. And so there's always companies that offer this service, this property management service. And so what they don't mention, what is missing in this calculation, right, of 20% ROI, is that the property management company, when they take care of your property and manage it as an Airbnb, they take 30 to 40% of the revenue that you generate rental. And that means this massively decreases your ROI. It looks even different. Of course, you make more when you manage it yourself. That's also definitely possible when you have the right systems in place, when you use the right tools, channel managers, pricing tools, and things like that. But you will see quickly, when you do your own research on Airbnb, research the competition, the nightly rate, the occupancy rate, and things like that, and also consider seasonality, like in the instance of Zanzibar, you will see that the math ain't mathing. It doesn't add up. How will I be able to get 20% ROI, And also important is that you check past projects of these people, of the person that is trying to get you to partner with them, or a real estate development company, checking past projects, developments. How are these developments doing? Are these people actually making money? And it's also very easy to find out. I recently, just this week, I for one of our community members who was tempted to buy a very beautiful property, a villa in a complex in the north of Zanzibar. And he was asked to pay over 200,000 US dollars. And so I said, okay, he asked me to cross check for him. And so I contacted my real estate agents and lawyers on the ground. And it turned out that this developer was well known for offering a nonsense business structure. So they were mostly selling to Italians and who buy into this nonsense structure, promising 25% ROI. But when I was doing my research, I saw that the occupancy was very, very low. And on top of that, they didn't inform our member that this development project is built on community land. And when you buy community land, there's always a rule, it will always belong to the community. And the lease agreement that you make, right, that you get is not like when it's most of the time when it's approved, so approved by the Zanzibar Investment Promotion Authority. You usually lease a plot or a building, a resident, a commercial property for minimum 33 years. But this project was, as I said, this land belonged to the community, and it was agreed that the land and all the property that were built on this land go back to the community after 25 years. And they have already started operating in 2018, so 9 years minus 25. You see, this is like all the information that was missing, the lack of transparency. And so that's so important to do background checks on partners, and business models also, if they're really profitable in that specific region. And, this is what people talk about when they say, I got scammed, I bought a land that belonged to someone else. And I invested in a business that's not profitable. And that's mostly because you didn't do your homework. And the next thing that you should do is also when it comes to lawyers, right? Check past clients. So, for instance, I never worked with clients, with lawyers that haven't done the job for someone I trust, I know. All the lawyers that I worked with, that they got the job done before, the same job for somebody else. And I got to know them through referral. Let's get to the next mistake. Mistake number 2, you believe scams and corruption stories mean Africa is too risky. So how can we flip that? How can we avoid that we are trapped in this mindset? Okay. First step is, as I said, verify everything and do your due diligence to minimize risks. And you should do that instead of not starting at all, Like, for instance, a good way to verify, I think it's also important to research and understand not just the local laws, rules, and regulations of the state, but also if there are some customary laws, like traditional systems of governance, right, which are still present in many parts of the African continent. A good example is, for instance, on the island of Zanzibar. They have elected elders known as sheha for each district, who are crucial for, like, when it comes to buying land, when it comes to solving disputes, when it comes to verifying land ownership, right? And I saw so many skipping this step, renting a property for Airbnb and paying the landlord without including the sheha, the local elder of this district, the appointed. Like, it's a mix. They have also the legal mandate by the government, right? But it's a mix of a traditional system of governance and the new, like the modern one. And so they didn't include the sheha into the agreement process, into the sales agreement of the land. And it's the job of the sheha, actually, because the sheha knows all the families of a district, most families. And so when you buy a piece of land or when you rent a piece of land, right, or let me say just a property, for instance, a house, which you want to rent from the landlord and then sublease it via Airbnb, he will tell you if that person is the real owner. He will gather all the neighbors, for instance, when you do a site visit, which includes the sheha. He will gather all the neighbors to also properly demarcate where does this land that you want to buy end and where does the land of the neighbor begins. And so so it's so important to verify these processes and do your due diligence to minimize the risks. And a good way to do that is often also to include, the elders, understand how the community is governed. And the next thing that you should do definitely is to avoid scams, corruption is and also like wasting your money, and minimizing the risk. Especially the best way to minimize the risk, that's what we are talking about here, like in detail, is start small. Start small. Don't invest all your money into a project, a business that you believe in, into a land where you see potential in. Really, always start small to test first, and then when you see it works, it's profitable, then you can invest more and scale. Like for instance, a friend of mine who also came to the island of Zanzibar started by he wanted to invest into the Airbnb business, short-term rental business, and so started with the rental arbitrage model, which means he rented a property, which he then, and it's also important to mention here, he's not from he's from the hospitality industry. He was running a restaurant back in Germany, but he's not familiar with short-term rental platforms and the business and the whole operation of running an Airbnb, a short-term rental. So he started small. He started with a 4-bedroom house, made his experiences, saw it's profitable, expanded to the next property, saw it's profitable, it's growing, and that is when he decided, okay, now is the time, because everything, he had the papers, the licenses, and the registered company. And that was when he decided, now I'm going to invest into buying land and build my own, right? Because after all, if you don't rent, but if you sublease your own property, of course, the revenue, the margins are much higher. So he first tested, he learned, he failed, he stood up and learned, improved, make the business running, made the business profitable, and then invested, went all in by buying the properties. Almost, he's nearly finalizing his near to completion of that new, yeah, the bungalows that are being constructed there. So yes, that's another very important step to avoid to minimize risks. And also another important step is, that should be obvious, register businesses and property, make a clear shareholding agreement, right? If you partner with the local, and do all of this correctly under the country's legal structures. Okay. And last but not least, get official receipts, yeah, for payments, for all processes, and keep all documents backed up. That's how you avoid and minimize the risks of scams and of corruption. Mistake number 3: you assume, and that's my favorite one, actually. I can relate to this particular one so much. You assume relocating means burning your bridges, because this one refers to the last sentence of this devil script. Let me read that for you again. At the same time, I would design visa rules and residency permits in the West that make leaving feel like like burning a bridge they can never cross again. So the mistake here that I see that many people make is assuming relocating means burning your bridges. And what you should do instead is, you shouldn't burn your bridges in the beginning. Instead, you should like be very strategic and cautious when relocating. Like plan a flexible residency strategy. No cutoffs, okay? And always keep your options flexible. Just like, for instance, one of our members of my community, who I consulted last week, she's from the US. She moved to Portugal with her daughter and now wants to relocate to the African continent and start her Airbnb business there. And so she was asking me, Wayne, because she was financially stable, she's receiving her retirement from the army, and she was financially stable actually, but she was unsure if she should stay in Portugal or if she should relocate right now. And the reason why she was unsure is because after residing, she was legally residing in Portugal, and when you reside for um, a certain amount of years, you can get citizenship. You can get the passport, right? There's different residency ways to there are different ways to permanent residency and citizenship in different countries. In Kenya, when you reside legally as a foreigner for 7 years, you can apply for permanent residency, for instance. And so in this case, she didn't want to rely on her American passport alone, but she wanted to take advantage of the fact that she has been living in Portugal for a while now and wanted to, secure herself and create more safety by also acquiring the Portuguese citizenship. And so I advised her to wait before burning bridges to Portugal. Instead, what she should do, what I advised her to do is, and that's what I advise many people, to start remote first, right? To keep your Western income, your address while you test living and operating abroad, if it even works, like for instance, what a strategy that I advise her to do is to research the visa paths for investors, business, digital nomads, or residency by investment options in different African countries, and then also consult an immigration lawyer in Portugal for the best strategy so that she can get her Portuguese citizenship, because some countries they they have rules and regulations for how many days in a year you have to reside in that country minimum to keep that status, to not lose the years that you have to accumulate to achieve to apply for citizenship. And so if she is allowed to travel long term, right, and if all it takes is to just keep her address, keep a post address, and pay taxes in Portugal, then I said you should do that. And the best way to do that is prepare yourself for the move, live below your means, move into a smaller apartment, which you where you have the explicit permission of the landlord to subrent it via Airbnb. Because that way, when you relocate to the African continent, when you travel there to build the business or just to travel around, right, and stay there for a couple of months, you don't have the double costs of paying rent back home in Portugal and here on the African continent. And instead, you can even make money with that property in Portugal. So, yeah, it's so important that you don't see this as burning your bridges, but especially in the beginning, try to maintain the legal ties in your current country, in your current place of residence, to keep this means like definitely keep the passport, right, keep a bank account, tax filing, mail forwarding, while testing relocation. And yeah, I think the biggest mistake that many people make, right, and that was the thing that helped me really break free from the fear of you're burning bridges, right? And that you can never cross again when you move to the African continent once, is you think in terms of fear, what if I fail, instead of opportunity, what if I win? Okay. And so that was, as I said, what really helped me leave Germany behind, because I am a German citizen. I have the German passport, and this is an incredible privilege. Okay. And so before I moved to to Ethiopia, I wrote down the worst case scenario, and that's also what I recommend everyone to do who feels stuck, who has the fear of risking too much by relocating to the African continent and investing into a business there. You should really write down all things that would be the worst case scenario, like what if you fail, what would happen. And you should not only write down the worst case scenario, but you should also write down how you would handle it. Okay. And then next, you should write down the best case scenario. That means your business is thriving, you're creating wealth for you and your children, you're finally living free, you can afford a house help that, you know, where you are able then to spend more quality time with your children. You are less stressed. So you should be really like writing out everything. Like imagine how your perfect life would look like when you win, okay? And you know what I realized then when I wrote down the worst case scenario and the best case scenario? I realized I don't even have much to lose. I have much more to win. So meaning if I win big. If I lose, I don't even lose too much. And the reason why I didn't have much to lose is because if I fail, because I'm a German citizen and I have the German passport, I can return to Germany anytime. Okay? That's not burning bridges. Secondly, I had a job before I moved to Ethiopia, and so many people that I know in my circle, they were working as waiters. Okay, they were working in restaurants as chefs, waiters, what have you. And I knew the worst thing that could happen to me if I return to Germany and not be able to, which means that the government will take care of you. If you don't have a job, you get welfare, you get payments, you get child support. You know, you are entitled to these services, social services, as a German citizen. And so I realized I don't even have much to lose. So what am I waiting for? What am I protecting? The job that I hate, the cold apartment that I can barely afford. So yeah, that might make my decision so easy to relocate. Yeah. So bottom line is, I used to what I'm showing you here is that minimizing risks is the way to go. Okay. You should not be afraid of scams and of corruption, but you should still take them seriously and do everything that is in your power to minimize the risks. And it's so interesting because back then I used to believe that great risks equal great returns, great reward. I really thought that great returns and big opportunities come from taking big risks. But because of my own journey, I learned the truth is that actually you need to always make investments and make decisions where, when, as I said, when you win big, and when you lose, you don't lose too much. Okay. And so, yeah, that's basically like the biggest lesson for me that I learned. And it's possible to relocate and invest in the African continent without taking too many risks. So yes, I think that is the bottom line, right? The message that I want to share with you. If you have any questions, let me know. Love your work, Wayne. Thank you. I'm happy that you enjoy and find value in this channel. April, I'm trying to get my citizenship in Benin. Yes, I heard Benin has has this program. So I wish you good luck with that. Your YouTube feels like a university class. You inspired us to make a move from the West and invest in Africa in the very near future. Thank you. I'm so happy to hear that, really. I really want to see all of you win and finally break free from this prison, this slavery. Everything that AI said actually what they have done, and the fact that they done it should let everyone know this place isn't safe for us. Yeah, the thing is, when I read the response from ChatGPT, I was not surprised. I've lived through that. And it's not nothing new for many of us, but it's still hits different when you hear the response and see, how systemic and how like carefully planned out the strategies and tricks are to keep us from, that's their biggest fear. Like, remember the last paragraph, why would I enforce these tricks? Because the greatest threat to their dominion, right, to their power, is an empowered Africa, a diaspora that brings back their skills, their money, their savings, the energy, and invest in their ancestral soil. It will be over for them. That day it will be over for them, you know. But so far they are succeeding because also mainly of the division that is being created. And also, I find this very interesting. I don't think also it's a coincidence that when you go on YouTube, you will find much, much more videos and stories of people who failed in Africa, who were scammed in Africa and returned to the US and UK, Europe. Then you will find success stories. I'm talking about success stories by everyday people, not by people like Aliko Dangote, those billionaires, but like people like me who started small and who were able to settle successfully and build a sustainable and profitable business. Yeah, you don't hear these stories often. And that is also one of the main reasons why I decided to start this channel, because I want to show people you what is possible, and especially want to encourage you to believe in yourself, because I wasn't born into a wealthy family. I don't have a degree in real estate. Okay. My background is, as many of you probably know, cultural anthropology and African studies. And so I was still able to build a profitable short term rental business on the African continent as a single mother of two children. And so if I can do it, what is your excuse? Um, There is a Pan African entrepreneur meeting in NYC in November. Amazing. Really make use of these link ups, join these spaces and connect with people on the ground. Really meet real people. Don't believe cut out all the noise of uh, alleged failed African businesses and things like that. Connect with the people who are where you want to be in life, and don't even listen to the rest. They don't know what they are talking about. I am from Rwanda. My name is Eric Muhirwa, and I really like to connect with you. Hi, Eric. Nice to meet you. It's good to have so many people from different places here. Yes, please don't try save money by skipping professionals. That's a very big mistake that many people make. They cut corners on the wrong ends. They try to save money. One way they try to save money is by choosing the cheaper lawyer, for instance, instead of choosing the one that has proof and references, or another way, what mistake that many people do, and I've shared this in the previous episode, on how to outsmart the financial tricks is they save money, they try to save money by trying to do it all alone, figure it out on their own, not paying for business consultation. Or most communities like the one that I have built, they are paid groups, of course, because I'm giving a lot of free value here. But for my community members, I really guide and mentor them. We have weekly live calls, and we review their listings. We help business owners, Airbnb owners, to optimize their listings. And so this is a lot of work, right? But if that helps you to reach your goal faster, of course you can do it alone, but it will maybe take you another 5 or 10 years, right? And you will make mistakes that you could have avoided if you joined communities. Okay, I have this great opportunity for you. I will share it with you now. So let me share the opportunity with you. So a good friend of mine, I met him actually in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, when I was running my Airbnb there. Now it's only hosting long-term guests. And so his name is Caleb. He came with the vision to relocate to Ethiopia. He's originally also Ethiopian, but from the diaspora, from Australia to be precise. And we met in Addis Ababa. We exchanged our vision. He is a very inspiring person. But unfortunately, because of the war, we both left the country. He went back to Australia. I went back to Germany and the Netherlands also for a couple of months. I stayed in the Netherlands. And then by coincidence, we met again in Kenya. And at that time, when I moved to Kenya, when I registered my company here, I learned that he had opened his company here in Kenya. And some of you might know of this company, Tech Safaris. Is the biggest tech related company here on the African continent. And what they've done now, and listen up, fam, please share this info. I will put the link in my bio. He shared with me and asked me to share it with my audience. They have launched a new program. It's their first program in that form. It's called the Building Back Home Fellowship. Okay, and what they are doing is they're doing three things. They will select 5 African diaspora founders with bold ideas. Okay, this can be ventures, this can be nonprofits or projects. Okay, and these these 5 African diaspora founders, however, must be based in the UK. Okay. And what they are doing is they will connect them to experts who've built big companies on the African continent. Okay. Like, for instance, Andela, the Ulesson Group, Afropolitan, and Wasoko. And what these experts will do, they will help them validate their ideas in 4 weeks. It's a short program, but very extensive and intensive. And so they will help you to find out if your idea is feasible, if it has potential, and they will advise you on which steps to take. And so he said this is a prime opportunity basically for all diasporans in the UK who want to build something high impact back home in their home country. And so the only downside is I was informed about this today. The application closes tomorrow midnight, the 29th of September. So if you're interested, you should apply on their website, Sasa Hivi, right now. Yeah, by latest tomorrow, until tomorrow midnight, East African time. This isn't something for you, please share it with a friend for whom it might be interesting. Amazing program. And that's what I love to see. I was mentioning the Patels who migrated to the US, built successful businesses, profitable businesses. And instead of gatekeeping, they shared their knowledge. They built a community. They inspired more of their community to come and invest. And that is why, because of the resilience, the the community they built, right? Which was a space where they shared the knowledge, resources, contacts, strategies. That's how they were able to to experience and to have this collective growth. And I love to see that is also happening more and more in the African diaspora among African entrepreneurs who moved back to the African continent and now are building communities, are building programs to help others to achieve the same. Yeah, and this is actually the most rewarding feeling, to see you have really helped someone to, live his purpose and really bring his vision to life. So, doesn't Airbnb contribute heavily to housing market instability and feasibility for the median income family in every market it enters? That's a good question. That's definitely the case in some places. We have witnessed this in Europe, in Madrid, in Lisbon, However, you know what? The This is a totally different case, I realized, in Zanzibar. And of course, you can never generalize, right? You have to go case by case. And in the case of Zanzibar, what the Airbnb business model did was it allowed for the first time local people to participate and also profit directly from the tourism economy. Before the tourism economy, right, the accommodation industry, the short term rental industry was exclusively dominated by big players like big hotel chains, foreign owned hotel chains. And because of Airbnb, it was possible for locals to enter the game and participate and profit from this how can I say yeah, this tourism boom. Okay. And so yes, I think it's a difference in other places, but I can only speak for Zanzibar. I'm not sure how it really plays out here in Nairobi. I just know that there is, at least I have the feeling that with the whole real estate development projects, the apartment complexes that are really popping out like mushrooms here in Nairobi, so much is going on that I feel that there is a much bigger offer than there is a demand. I think here in Nairobi, what is a bigger challenge to local housing is rather the extremely high presence of UN officials. Like, for instance, next year, the UN will relocate over 800 of its staff from New York to Nairobi. And not just imagine, this is not just 800 people, it's 800 of their staff and their families. And so I think that is a main factor that contributes to the rising housing costs, and in general, a big presence of expats also often leads to a rising cost of living. But these are just assumptions. Thank you all for the kind words. Really, I appreciate. This is so kind. Yes, start small, war drum. Always start small, test it. It's the best way to really also learn. And if you fail, you fail. If you look at the most successful people, like for instance, even like not just in business, but Oprah Winfrey, Steve Jobs, all these people, they failed. It's not the end, it's part of the process. Okay. You start, you fail, you get up, you learn, and you continue. You only fail when you give up. Okay. So see it as part of the process. Asili TV. In Rwanda, it is easier to start a business without that bureaucracies. Thank you for sharing this interesting topic. Yes, indeed, I only heard only good things about Rwanda, especially when it comes to business, and that it's the country where mm, where there is the process is the easiest to register a company. You can do that online. And we also have a couple of members in my community who are investing in Rwanda now, and it's just lovely what they have to say. I've always wondered what your opinion is on the Nairobi luxury apartment industry. Well, I don't really have an opinion. I am planning to visit a few properties with real estate agents that I'm working with, and I might also make a vlog out of it and share it with you. What I believe is that Nairobi luxury apartment industry is definitely profitable for long term, especially when you consider the rent that the African Americans are charged in the US, or the diaspora is charged, like what you pay for an apartment in London, okay, or in Berlin. That's insane. And then when you consider, I find this especially attractive for digital nomads, right, who make their money online and who can work remotely from anywhere in the world. And so that's one of the best ways to really save a lot of money. This strategy of geo arbitrage, moving to a country where the cost of living is much lesser, while at the same time having your income in US dollars, in euros, right? And so what you get in Nairobi for 2,000 US dollars a month, it's easy to find a luxury apartment in that price range. You will get a small, really dusty student bedroom, a one bedroom studio in London. That's insane. And so the quality of life increases when you go to countries where, the cost of living is much more affordable. And then in this case, you can apply for a digital nomad visa. Many countries on the African continent offer this by now. Thank you all for your great encouragements and kind words. Okay. Canada. I'm watching from Guyana, South America, one of my favorite countries. Dorian Hendricks, amazing country, best food. I visited Guyana for a research project in 2012, one of the most underrated countries in South America. People always talk about Brazil, they talk about Colombia and Argentina, but they are sleeping on the Guyanas, especially British Guyana, the home country of the great Walter Rodney. Greetings to Congo, Brazzaville. Nahapi Eritrean from Canada. Salam, salam, dek ade. Greetings. So kind of you, really. Oh, thank you for this kind donation. That's amazing. So kind of you. I really appreciate your support. Yeah, I know many people have the big desire, Murido, to escape from the US because the writings on the wall, it's like I feel like planning your exit, having a plan B is not an option anymore. It's really a necessity because I don't want anyone to have the rude awakening and then it might be too late. Yes, exactly. The time to invest in Africa is now, especially land. Absolutely. Nairobi and Addis will be unrecognizable in the next 10 years. Not just Nairobi and Addis, basically every urban area on the African continent. Why do you think they are all desperately trying to get in? Why do you think Russia is heavy on building military ties with leaders in the Sahel zone? Why do you think that India is securing more and more trade deals? Why do you think that Europe is investing billions in infrastructure and renewable energy? Because they see something, they know what the future of Africa holds, while us, so many of us, are watching from the sidelines and stuck, and mostly also stuck because of their mindset, because they believe the lies. They believe the lies that are being told about Africa. And mind you, the same people that try to convince us that Africa is dangerous, chaotic, and hopeless are the same people who are rushing in and investing billions. So, yeah, wake up, people. I am actively building an apartment building in Rwanda. It is easy to register a business in Rwanda. Absolutely. I analyzed the short-term rental market, and it's really, really profitable. Especially Rwanda is a country that is, it's in its early stage of opening up to tourism, right? You see so many developments. Now they were hosting I saw today in the news, the first cycling event, a particular cycling event, the first one on the African continent, and they are smart. Oh, my mom is doing fine, Maximilian. Thank you. I can't wait to see her soon again. I'm flying her in again soon, this time with her friends, and then I will surprise her with some new adventures. All right. I really enjoyed this live stream today. Now it's time for me to go to bed. And I hope you enjoyed the live stream as well. I hope that you found some value in it. And I appreciate your support, fam. Thanks for watching. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, oh, and we have something to celebrate. I finally hit the 100K. I am so happy, really. It's so amazing to see how this community is growing, Imagine when I started, I thought it will take me years to even reach 10,000 subscribers, to reach the right people. And I was wondering, will people even care? Will they care? Who cares, right? But it taught me that everyone has a story to tell, right? And it's like the biggest gift that you can give to humanity, to our people, the biggest gift that you can give to Africans is empowering them, uplifting them, helping them to believe in themselves, helping them to see what is possible by being also a living example, by leading by example, And that is the biggest reward for me. I never really cared for the numbers, but I love to see how the community, it's for me, it's about the community that is growing, and how this also like shapes my life, the opportunities that are opening up for me, the people who approach me, the people that you get to know, the doors that open up for you. And it was the same thing, I delayed starting my YouTube channel for years because I had this big fear of opening up, of sharing also my story, of being vulnerable, also sharing my mistakes, my failures. But I never expected that this will resonate with so many people out there. And I'm so grateful. Give thanks and praise to the Most High. Thank you so much. You are really, I can't express enough how grateful I am for the support you're giving me. And yeah, let me know how I can support you more. Let me know in the comment section. I'm planning to go live more regularly. And if there's anything that I can help you with particular questions, post them in the comment section below, and then I will see to try to make a new video live stream out of the most frequently asked questions. Okay, thank you so much. Bye, good night.